Why has venture capital not developed in Switzerland as it has in the United States of America? Because there is no way for an investor to exit from his investment through an initial public offering, or IPO, and convert his private holding to a liquid, publicly traded stock. By liquid, I mean a market able to expeditiously execute the contemplated buy or sell transaction. How can you resolve your startup financing problem without crossing the limit of investing more than 300,000 Swiss francs in a single company? It is often difficult or even next to impossible to raise the money to pay for a large IPO. In addition to significant out-of-pocket and upfront costs, it monopolizes a significant portion of the company's resources and of the management's attention. That is why it is not uncommon that during the IPO process that the performance of the company is heavily negatively impacted. Hence, additional funds are needed if only to offset the poor sales performance due to the all-out effort required for the IPO process. Moreover, in assessing the total cost of an IPO, it is appropriate to differentiate the run-up of costs that must be borne by the company issuing shares before the IPO process is complete. These costs are called upfront or pre-cash, fees for lawyers, accountants, investment bankers, advisors, etc. Then there are the costs that will be paid at the end of the IPO by the raised funds. These are post-cash, commissions to brokers, investment bankers, etc. Swiss Financing Experts, Inc. provides the solution. The participatory foster, to be disclosed after appropriate non-disclosure, non-circumvent, and non-competition agreements are in place. Mr. Marc Deschenaux invented the financial construct he calls foster to finance a startup. However, this solution costed more than $2.5 million. Mr. Manouk der Stepignon modified foster to make it less expensive and adapted to a group of startups seeking financing, thereby making it participatory. Hence, participatory foster. The combination is based on a mix of simple principles. 1. Incorporation of the incubator. An IPO incubator company is incorporated in the state of Delaware in the United States of America. For our purposes, we will call it incubator. It's a traditional financial company that, depending on its structure, may or may not be required to register with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as a subject of the 1940 Investment Company Act. 2. Startup selection by the bank. The bank selects 10 startups it wants to finance. It's better if these startups are in a certain branch of activity, but it is not a requirement. 3. Incorporations of the subsidiaries. The incubator will incorporate an American subsidiary with authorized 10 million shares of common stock, the subsidiary. There will be only one class of stock allowed. 4. Startups' shareholders swap their shares against the ones of the subsidiaries. The shareholders of the startup exchange their participation against the same percentage of the subsidiary through a non-taxable stock swap. 5. Consolidation of the holdings. The subsidiary will consolidate all participating startups seeking IPO financing on its balance sheet. 6. Financing of the holding. Each startup seeking financing will invest the bank credit or contribution cash in the amount of 300,000 Swiss francs in the subsidiary. The subsidiary will pay the incubator for the initial public offering. 7. Filing of the incubator. Deschenaux Hornblower and Partners prepares a Regulation A+ disclosure document for the incubator. This disclosure document states to the investor that the incubator is an investment company that finances IPOs of any size, against a share of capital prior to the IPO, and a pro rata share of the raised funds payable after the IPO. This document offers the investor 3 ways out of investment. A. Either he sells his incubator shares at the time of the IPO. B. Either he swaps his incubator actions into corporation actions after the incubator IPO and before the start of the corporation IPO process. C. Incubator buys back his shares after its incubator IPO. The issuer cannot begin this full registration process until it has 2 full audited accounting years and a number of financial conditions completed, but we can expedite the time frame through some proprietary techniques of partial merger. Incubator files with the SEC for registration and listing on a U.S. public stock market. 8. Roadshows. Meanwhile, Incubator and the investment bank syndicate distributing Incubator shares are organizing roadshows to promote the stock on the market and to collect Incubator share orders. During this period, legally, each market player is legally bound to not buy the shares. He can only express his interest and quantify the amount he is willing to invest. But in practical terms, as you know, a buyer who expresses an interest in a quantity of shares and then withdraws would lose any credibility on the market and would be unable to continue trading in other IPOs. 9. IPO of the incubator. At the end of this process, points 5 above to 7 above, iteratively, the SEC gives the incubator's jurist the quotation authorization. Incubator can therefore register with a U.S. stock market, such as the NASDAQ. Incubator rings the NASDAQ bell and makes his IPO. 10. Financing of startups by Incubator. Once the funds are raised, in accordance with the uses and applications stipulated by the Reg A+ disclosure document, Incubator makes at least the following payments. A payment to the investment bank's account to pay the brokerage commission if it has not been deducted before the funds are returned to Incubator. B. The incubator keeps a $15 million budget necessary to carry out its own IPO and distributes $30 million covering the costs of each of the 6 subsidiaries' IPOs. C. The incubator makes a payment to each of the subsidiaries to secure their $5 million fundings. 11. Deschanel, Hornblower and Partners Corporation's team of legal advisors is drafting a Regulation S-3 disclosure document for the incubator. Conclusion. The participatory Foster solution makes it possible to make a first initial public offering of Incubator, serving as mezzanine financing to support the subsidiaries and financing their initial public offering for $300,000 per company.